Thank you, Honourable Skosana. Honourable Schikkerling.
Thank you, Chair. I don't necessarily have a question for the AG. I just want to thank them for the report. I think it's very detailed and very thorough. And I think it's indicative of what every one of us have been saying for months, if not for a year or longer, that there's a problem with the management of SAPS. I think they've highlighted the fact that critical vacancies are left open. And I think something that is incredibly important that we should take note of today is the fact that SERA has completely lost sight of its mandate, completely. And SERA in its current form is no longer fit for purpose at all. And definitely we need a complete review of SERA, and restructuring is absolutely necessary, because in its current form it is not fulfilling any mandate at all. I regularly visit court cases to see what's happening. It's interesting to me. And everything that the AG has highlighted today makes sense. Dockets are not filled in correctly, which lead to the cases being thrown out of court. They're not completed properly. We wait for months and months for forensics. We wait for ballistics. We wait for SAP 205s. It cannot be that the dockets are not scanned properly. So I just have a question to the AG. I mean, what is your suggestion, or how do you see the scanning of the dockets being rectified? And I agree. I think the system needs to be digitized completely. Is there any other recommendation that you've made, considering that this is the 5th year that you're speaking about the same thing, and the SAPS is obviously not listening to the recommendations you've made? They're not listening to their own internal audit. So what recommendation do you have there? And it's also very clear to me that we've got a massive problem in procurement, not only from the amount of money that we see on irregular expenditure, because I think a lot of irregular expenditure takes place, and then because the expenditure is so high already in the SAPS, it gets converted to unauthorized expenditure, so that we don't increase our irregular expenditure. So I just want to see what is your take on the AG on the difference in what the police is doing currently with the irregular expenditure and the unauthorized expenditure, because I think it is being redirected incorrectly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Schikkerling. Honourable Reverend Meshwe.
Thank you, Chairperson. It is very concerning to hear that there is a stagnation in audit outcomes, which obviously means that there is no improvement. There should be reasons why recommendations are not implemented. The AG spoke about lack of strong leadership, and as a result, management not actioning what they're recommending. Now, what in their assessment of the attitudes and what is happening, what do they think could be at the base of the reasons why there is no actioning? Can it be because that is a sign of condonation, or there's a lack of skills? And if there are lack of skills in senior management, what does the AG do to ensure that there will be improvement? Because it cannot be that it is like this, we just have to accept that things will remain like this for as long as it is necessary. Do you sense that there could be an element of defiance? And why would cooperation not be there when it is for the good of the country? Because resources are needed to fight crime. And when we complain that crime is not being reduced, then we are told that there are no resources, budgets have been cut, and there is money that should be recovered and it's not recovered. Are reasons given why it is not recovered? Because ultimately, SAPS has to turn the situation around crime around in this country. And for as long as they are not able to recover, or they are not recovering, I'm not sure whether it's a matter of not being able or not willing to do that, not doing enough to do that. I would like to have some explanations on that. The issue of case dockets not properly scanned. It's also an issue that obviously one needs to know. The National Commission, we are told that he tells the stations the importance of doing that, and that is not done. Again, the question of defiance comes back to me. Is it because there is defiance, or there is unwillingness? What could be the reason, and how does the AG think this can be turned around? Because it cannot be business as usual. We cannot be told that from year to year, from financial year to another financial year, there is a stagnation. There is not going to be improvement. This stagnation has to change. So what does the AG think has to be done so that this stagnation becomes something of the past? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Reverend. Honourable Ghana, we're going to go through your remarks and questions, and then I'm going to pause and hand over to the AG again to answer, from where we will go to the Honourable Sokopo, James and Mbio. Okay? Honourable Ghana.
Thanks very much, Chair. Good morning to you, leadership of the ministry, the police, and everyone here. So I'll repeat what I've been saying for a long time, that what we see, the fights that we see in the police have to do with the supply chain.
Yeah.
And we must not think that the fights are about protecting the people of South Africa. At the root of the fights, or whatever we see the police, all these press conferences and all those things have got to do with supply chain. So I'll just focus there, and then when we get to the police, I'll deal with the other issues. What I feel, AG, you did not give us and also the people of South Africa a flavor. It's the nature of the contracts that you're talking about, where irregular expenditure, especially in the police, were incurred. Because if we start getting a sense to say, all right, is this the contract that has to do with the bulletproofs? Is this the contract that has to do with the boots? Is this the contract that has to do with the wellness and so forth? We start getting to understand. So when we see the figures like this, and you say 649 million non-compliance with procurement laws, it does not tell the story. And I think you need to tell us to say which of these contracts, what were these suppliers meant to supply? And then, because even this particular tender that's in the middle of all the things that are happening right now, of Mr. Matlala, whether when we talk about this figure, is it inclusive or exclusive of that? And because it was cancelled after some payment, so it was not the entirety of the contract. So there was some payment of 50 million, unless if maybe that particular contract, its termination came after the official termination. Obviously, the pronouncements to say it will be cancelled and so forth might have fallen within the financial year but the actual signing to say it's terminated, it's the next financial year. I think there needs to be clarity on that. And whether when we look at this amount, is it inclusive of that? And then when you, for instance, you mention that there's a almost 2.5 billion of irregular expenditure that has not been submitted to the relevant authority for further action. What do you mean? Is it something that you think there is a 2.5 that sits there that still needs further investigation by yourselves and the team, or this, or I mean, like, and give us a bit of flavor, especially in the police. Which contracts become which contracts are tends to follow or incur irregular expenditure? Because once you get there, you are able to start saying, all right, is this a pattern? If it has to do with the police uniform or the whatever, the bulletproof, the guns and so forth, then you start going in. And then the last point, Chair, on SCM, because that's the center of the fights. That's the center of everything that has gone wrong with the police. It's around the people that sits in the, whether it's the bid, evaluation, education, the committees. Because as we understand, we are made to understand, is that one of the people that sat in the bid that awarded Mr Matlala resigned and went to the javelin throwing. We are dealing with javelin throwing. So you sit here, you award the tender, then you resign to go and work for the company that you awarded the tender to. What kind of vetting, and it might very well, General, this one you'll answer when you come in, to say what level of vetting goes into the people who are sitting in these committees and the lifestyle audits. You know, like last week I asked the Minister of Public Service and Administration, and he said in the entirety of the public service, only 24 individuals failed the lifestyle audit. The entirety of the public service, the entirety. And I'm like, it can't be. That only 24 people, they are living within their means, living according to the salaries that they receive. We know it can't be. And to understand in the SCM, how do we do the lifestyle audits? Because if you go to the parking lots, you can say that this person with the salary that you are paying them, general, they can't afford the kind of cars that they are driving. They can't afford the kind of houses that they are living in. But they are living there. So I think let's expand a bit on the SCM. Let's not be accused after this meeting that the portfolio committee did not do its job, did not ask the questions that needs to be asked. So please unpack the SCM. Let's understand what's at the root of all these fights in the police. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Ghana. I then hand over back to the AG. You always have the nice opportunity to answer all the uncomfortable questions. So I hand over to you, and then to the members, please just keep track. If something is missed, that we can come back to it. I want to make sure we cover every single one. Okay, is your hand up, Honourable Skosana? Okay, I'll list you. I'll put you on the list. There we go.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I'll try answer as much as I can answer, but I think some questions could be really questions that will properly be answered by the department, but I'll try and sort of show which ones are those. I think there was a question around what's our take on irregular expenditure and unauthorized expenditure, or I think along those lines. I think in the current year and the most recent years, there hasn't been any unauthorized expenditure as it was incurred by the Department of Police. The expenditure we've been highlighting to this committee, to management as well, that has been ever increasing. It is that one of irregular expenditure. And maybe this answer will also answer Honourable Ghana's question that talks to what type. I don't think we've done a proper assessment to say we can see what type of contracts that tend to be irregular in the space. But the overall assessment is the fact that there is things that tend not to go right. And I think majority of it we've identified in terms of changing some criteria like in pre-qualifying. Let's say there was something that was said needed to be done or was put as a pre-qualifying criteria, but when the evaluation then occurs, then either the rule is relaxed or is changed a bit. Whether it's because there's a need that has changed or maybe the department is seeing that something has changed, there's a process that needs to be followed. Those cannot be changed in the process of evaluation because you've already put specific criteria to the public out there of what needs to occur, and therefore you cannot just go change some of those. So I think that assessment of what type we haven't really done. So I think the question about the increasing irregular expenditure of what kind that it really is. So annually, currently, I think previously you would be able to see the full balance of irregular expenditure going back as far back 10 years, depending if the department has dealt with it. A few years ago, there was an instruction or a practice note that came from Treasury that allowed the department to only show the comparative amount. So the current year is irregular in the prior years. So the 3.1 billion, as we are sitting in the annual report, is irregular expenditure that goes a number of years. So some of this irregular expenditure would have shown in the years we were auditing at that particular time. Consequence management would have followed up to see if it was taken or if it was done in those irregular expenditure, then it sits that side. So there's a number of processes that needs to happen. Majority of the time or of instances is where it needs to be condoned by National Treasury. So for whatever reason, whether there's delays from National Treasury or other reasons, you find that it's not completely dealt with in that manner. So, but there are other processes I do understand the department can undertake in terms of continuously dealing with that, because those irregular expenditures, sometimes they would have been investigated. Consequence management, they would have said they've taken, but however, it will be the step of condoning, which, depending on who's the condoner at the time, will determine if they are going to condone that irregular expenditure. I want to go back to just look at some of the questions. I think there was a question from the Honorable Reverend Mushwe, who asked about what do we think needs to be done with the scanning. And I think it's going back to the root cause we kept on talking about in terms of performance information. So instruction note, you go, deals with case docket, deals with maybe dealing or doing certain processes. We found in most instances there are controls that have been put. So either there's an accounting officer's instruction note or there's a legislation that says members need to do X, Y, Z. But more often than not, you'd find that they don't adhere to those instructions. Same with the scanning. There is an instruction to say that detective commanders of those stations need to weekly, I think, verify and check if the case dockets have the scanned documents, and then ultimately the station commander in that area weekly need to go, I think it's weekly if I'm not mistaken, my team can correct me on that, need to also go verify and check if that action is done, because ultimately the responsibility is given them. So question is, when a member does not adhere to the instruction, what then happens to the member? And I think that's where the consequence management is coming to. So if that member is not doing, the member didn't do that, the detective commander did not follow up and do their part, the station commander did not do what they needed to do, what then happens to the district commander? Did the district commander go back and check? And again, there's a provincial commander. So it's a whole chain, which I'm still talking about, to then say that's the problem. So one of the key things that were raised by management, or management have cited in terms of scanning of case docket, I think they've spoken about how some of their scanners are not linked to the actual system. So now it then means it's an internal process where there's a process that was not done, because you've got a scanner, you've got a system, but you didn't link the two. So something needs to be looked at. But I do understand that there's areas that are either remote or for whatever reason, there's network issues. So we continue as we go to the stations. There's some stations that will tell you that they are struggling with networks, where they are unable, or the network is such that it's not stronger to be able to handle the volume of what they need to do. Whether that is factual is correct, it's not some of the things we've verified, but in some areas we would see that really they are struggling with network. But again, it's going back to the department to then say, how do you plan for it? Because even when IJS or this ICDMS comes in, there's a planning process that comes with it. So meaning that at planning, you know how many stations you have, you know where they are stationed, and you know for you to implement such a system, what needs to be supplemented by it, including networks. So those are part of the integrated part of planning to then say, we are already in the phase of implementing and concluding the second part, which is supporting the full detective processes. But however, we're still also struggling with the first part that needed network. So meaning that there needs to be that alignment in the planning and in terms of implementation. So part of our recommendation is going back to the fact that consequence management and adherence of those instruction notes, and as well the proper planning and aligning the needs that are going to go with that part. And then I just want to see what other areas we have. I think I do not have a full details of which contracts. Maybe while we are taking another round of questions, I can just consult with my team to see if we can identify the contracts that were audited and which ones and what has happened. I think we sort of a rough number of how many contracts. Like I can tell you that in the current year we audited X number of contracts, and of those X number of contracts, how many had issues or we identified irregular expenditure in it. There was a question around the vetting of the bid evaluation committee members, and I think that one's more specifically to the department, the question. But however, I think you would see in our root causes we were talking about SCM was a proper judgment process, or if not judgment process, but a proper due diligence that is lacking somewhere in the evaluation committees, and that is why we continue to see the irregular expenditure. The one thing we are saying is that we've been putting recommendations in the last few years of saying deal with the issues that we are finding in the procurement space, but more so something has not been done. I do understand that in the current year there is a new initiative like internal audit, re-looking at the tenders before they are awarded, and I think the department will talk more to that. And as well, I think there was an oversight mechanism that is supposed to assist. But there was also a question about, is it a complete defiance of members on what they are doing, or and all of that. I think when I talk about the fact that there is instruction that certain things need to be handled a certain way, and if somebody is not complying with the process, what does it mean? And if as leadership, because one of the things that is leadership that needs to be done is accountability and setting the tone of the ethical posture of the whole organization, and it's important. So therefore, it's layers of a lot of things that need to be adhered to. But the one thing I would say, there is a process, there is specific requirements of how members need to behave. Then question is, when they don't behave, what then happens? That continue to be that. I think I'll let Tabelo to just take on if there's anything I've missed. Other than that, I'll just get those numbers of contracts we've audited. Yes.
No, thank you, Nelly. I think she's covered it. I really wanted to re-emphasize, and maybe our request is for that question to be directed to the department. Like she said, in all our work, one of the feedback we have is instruction notes, beautiful instruction notes that were signed off by the National Commissioner that are very clear to go to the people on the ground. The question then is, if the people on the ground are not implementing, what are we doing about them? The one thing that we also saw, I thought she was going to cover on some of the observation we had when we embarked on the journey where we call it adopted district. So as part of the work that we do, where we were trying to help the department to improve their AOPO, we then said we are going to partner with them and we are going to then select a district and then be able to journey with them. And the understanding was the fact that by the time an achievement is reported in the annual performance report, it starts on the ground. And it is important that the policeman on the ground who triggers an achievement understand the importance of why they do what they do. So if the person on the ground doesn't understand that if I'm going to be the first person on the crime scene and I'm going to start writing down the information, if they don't have a vision of how this is going to end in the annual performance report, they won't understand the importance that they need to put on getting things right. If the next level is the people that then capture on the system, if they don't understand the importance of the era of male versus female, what that era means from the crime stats perspective, if they don't get it, we are then really going to already have a problem. So it's important that the people on the ground understand that my job is not just to capture. My job is not just to complete a document. What I input has a ripple effect at the end of the day with what we end up reporting. And that project was really trying to understand what is really open on the ground and try to create awareness of the importance of the work that they do. It's linked back to my ecosystem. If that official does not understand the importance of what they do, if that official does not understand how their work feeds into the bigger picture, we can sit and have this conversation. The National Commissioner can send instruction notes. It's not going to work. So it's important that everybody within the department has an understanding of how their work impacts and feeds into the bigger picture of what we are then trying to achieve. So when we did that project, we really wanted to unpack that as well, but also try to understand where the gaps happening. And I think that's why we would see our recommendation, instead of just giving a recommendation to National Commissioner, we started talking about station commanders. We started talking about district commanders. Because that's the level that the department has created. And now all those levels needs to be aligned and make sure the fact that there's a problem. I also said in my ecosystem, senior management, they have a responsibility of creating an environment that the official can be able to perform. They have a responsibility of empowering the officials. And if they are not doing their job and they are signing off on these reports, then we are then going to have a problem. So there's a need to unpack the levels. Station commander, are you doing their job? Do you understand your job? You know, the next level, so that we are then able to do that. So I think that's our view, that maybe there's a gap with the overall understanding of how my job fits into the bigger scheme of things. For us to be able to report the crime stats, the person that triggered it needs to understand that I need to get the information right. I need to make sure that it's captured right, so that we then don't have the findings we have at the end of the day. You've covered me on the nature of the contracts. I think the team can quickly check and give a feedback on. And I think that's what I just wanted to add. Oh yes, on the irregular expenditure also covered me as well. So the National Treasury Framework is clear. When there's an irregular expenditure that has been identified, what is the process that needs to be followed? There needs to be an investigation, and if people are found, they need to be held accountable. National Treasury will not condone an irregular expenditure amount if they are not satisfied that the steps has been followed. Mostly what happens is, yes, the department can submit and say, this is my investigation. If National Treasury is not really convinced that there was proper due diligence, if they're not convinced that people are held accountable, they will not condone it. And what we will then see is this ever-increasing irregular expenditure balance. And hence our recommendation in the slides is to say they need to go further. If Treasury wanted extra things to be done, they need to implement them so that we start seeing that irregular expenditure dealt with. And I think it's important that if irregular expenditure is not dealt with, the culture is not changing. If we are not holding people accountable, there's going to be continuously new irregular expenditure entering the system. So it's important that we complete this part from the old irregular expenditure, and the culture throughout is understood that people are held accountable in this department, so that we can then close it so that we don't have new irregular expenditure. So I think that's what I wanted to add, but the team is going to look at those from the work that we did, what type of contracts they were, so that then we can then provide feedback for you.
So just to check whether this particular contract of Mr Matlala was part of the audit or not. Is that what you are going to check now? Because you should have anticipated that the question will come, and you should have been able to say to us that that particular contract is not included for this audit. I mean, it has been topical for the last 3 months. Was it part of the audit or not?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Honorable Member. No, I meant the whole list. I thought you were looking for the whole list. I thought we understood the question to say, when you see the irregular expenditure that's reported, you wanted to see the whole list of type. If the question was on the specific contract, yes, it was. So the process that happened is we selected the sample, and then it was part of our sample. And then when we then were looking for information, we did get feedback that there was work that internal audit has done, but they were not done with their process. So we then also embarked on a process of then auditing that specific contract as well. So yes, work was done on the specific contract the member is asking.
It's non-compliant.
Oh, the non-compliance. Okay. So my team will keep me honest. There's 2 non-compliance that was raised, and I think internal audit can also respond on what they found. But on the work that we do in our scope, there was 2 non-compliance that we raised. The first one was the fact that it was not advertised within 21 days, which is one of the requirements by Treasury. The second one was back around the pre-qualification method that we raised, to say when we were assessing and we realized that some of the pre-qualification matters were not met. I'm getting my team to confirm, and therefore they should have been disqualified. Yes. So they didn't meet some of the pre-qualification criteria, and therefore they should have been disqualified, but they were not disqualified.
I like that saying when you say your team is going to keep you honest. Yes. And then everyone sits there like...
No, it's because remember they are the one that looks at the actual document, so they must hold me accountable so that I must not misrepresent the work that they did. Thank you.
So colleagues, then we move to